After building and monetizing a channel while working full-time as an attorney and coaching creators through these mindset blocks, I realized the biggest thing sabotaging your growth usually isn't strategy, it's fear. So if you feel like you know what to do to grow your channel, but something keeps stopping you from fully showing up, this video will explain exactly what's happening beneath the surface. Fear of judgment is the fear that people will criticize, mock, or dismiss what you put out. It often shows up as overthinking your content before you post, editing longer than you need to, or softening your opinions so you don't offend anyone. This fear usually comes from early experiences where being seen or evaluated felt unsafe. Maybe standing out brought criticism instead of connection. So your brain learned to scan for threats in order to protect you. For creators, that pattern is expensive because the algorithm rewards a clear, consistent, confident voice, and fear of judgment quietly erodes all three. You hold back, you water it down, and the content you end up with doesn't fully represent you, which makes it harder to build the audience and the trust you're actually working toward building on this platform. Fear of failure is the fear that trying and not succeeding means something about you or your potential, not just about the video. The underlying belief usually sounds something like, if I fail, it proves I wasn't good enough to begin with. So you wait until things feel ready. You might spend more time planning than executing. You keep tweaking instead of publishing because the draft that never goes live can never fail. For creators, this fear is particularly costly because YouTube rewards iteration and consistency above almost everything else. The creators who grow fastest are usually not the most talented. They're the ones willing to publish imperfect work and get a little bit better with each upload. Fear of failure prevents you from putting in the reps you need to succeed. Fear of success is the fear that getting what you want will cost you something you're not prepared to lose. On the surface, you want a thriving YouTube channel with high views, tons of subscribers, and lots of engagement. But at a deeper level, success often looks like it opens the door to more of what you're already afraid of. More visibility means more judgment. More growth means more pressure to sustain it. More income can surface beliefs about money, identity, or worthiness that you haven't fully examined yet. So your nervous system, which is wired to move towards safety, starts to resist the very outcomes you're working toward. You self-sabotage because a part of you believes that success isn't safe. This can look like stalling after a video performs well, unconsciously producing weaker content right after a breakthrough, or finding reasons to slow down exactly when things start to accelerate. Fear of rejection is the fear of being fully seen and still not being chosen. It's the fear that if you share your real perspective or your authentic, unfiltered self, people will leave, unsubscribe, or decide you're not for them. You might avoid committing to a specific niche because you don't want to alienate anyone. You might stay vague in your messaging so you don't exclude people. You might hold back a strong opinion because you're bracing for the pushback. But here's what actually happens. Vague positioning doesn't attract anyone deeply. The fear of being rejected by some keeps you from being genuinely resonant with your ideal clients, the ones who would happily invest in your products or services. Those are probably 4 of the most common fears, but we have 8 more to go, and some of these may surprise you. Fear of visibility is a fear of being truly seen, not just your work, but you. For some creators, that level of exposure activates something that feels closer to danger than opportunity. I experienced this one firsthand. For years, I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but didn't. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was afraid of who would see it. I was an established attorney who had been practicing law for over 20 years, and the thoughts that went through my head were, what would my colleagues think? What would clients think if they came across my videos? That fear drove me to start a faceless channel a couple of years ago, which felt like a good solution at the time, but it really wasn't. It was just a way of staying hidden. On YouTube, this can look like having content ready and still not posting it, going quiet after video takes off, not promoting your work even when you know it could genuinely help someone. It doesn't feel like fear in those moments. It just feels like hesitation, but that hesitation has a cost, and it shows up directly in your growth. Fear of conflict is the fear that disagreement or tension will damage or destroy a relationship or connection. It shows up with collaborators, with your team, or with viewers who challenge your content. You see it in how you handle criticism publicly, whether you share your honest opinion or soften it to keep the peace, and how you show up when a partnership gets complicated. For creators, this fear is particularly costly because it quietly shapes your voice over time. You hedge your opinions to stay neutral. You agree in the comments when you don't actually agree. You avoid the difficult conversation with a collaborator because keeping the peace feels safer than risking the relationship. None of it feels like a big deal in the moment, but over time, a channel built on avoiding conflict loses something essential. Because a creator with no real stance is hard to trust and even harder to remember. Fear of wasting time is the fear of investing months or years of your life into something that ultimately leads nowhere. You're putting in real time and real money, equipment, editing, maybe a team. And underneath all of it is a quiet question that never fully goes away. What if I'm building in the wrong direction? Wrong niche, wrong format, wrong audience entirely? And YouTube doesn't give you quick answers. You can be a year in before you get a real signal either way. That uncertainty makes full commitment feel risky. So instead of staying the course long enough to find out, you start making micro adjustments driven by this fear. You pivot before the strategy has had time to give you enough data on whether or not it's working. You second guess decisions that were actually sound. And the painful irony is that the constant course correcting ends up costing you more time than the wrong direction would have. Fear of not being good enough is the fear that if people look closely enough, they'll find out you don't quite measure up, that you're not knowledgeable enough, creative enough, original enough, or credible enough to be doing what you're doing. And it hides well. It shows up as perfectionism, chronic over-researching, or a constant underlying feeling that no matter how hard you work, you don't quite have what it takes to really make it on YouTube. From the outside, it can look like high standards, and you might even tell yourself that's what it is, that you just care about quality. And who can argue with that, right? But underneath, what's really happening is your brain is finding reasons not to finish, not to post, not to fully show up. Because if you put your best out there and it doesn't land, that feels like proof of the thing you were already afraid was true, that you're not good enough. Most creators stuck in this pattern aren't lacking skill. They're waiting for something external to tell them they're good enough to be here. And the painful part is that no view count, no subscriber milestone, no external result will give you that permanently. It has to come from somewhere inside of you. Now we're moving into fears that tend to be the least visible and the most quietly damaging. Fear of losing control is the fear of powerlessness. It's the discomfort of not being able to determine what happens next, no matter how prepared or capable you are. YouTube is one of the hardest environments to be in if you carry this fear. The algorithm changes without warning. Views fluctuate for no logical reason. A video you poured everything into underperforms, while one you almost didn't even post takes off. There is no formula that guarantees success. And for high-achieving creators who are used to effort producing predictable outcomes, that reality is genuinely uncomfortable. So the instinct is to control what you can. You check analytics obsessively. You spiral every time YouTube changes a policy. You hold on to a strategy that isn't working because changing it feels like surrendering the little control you have left. But here's what that actually costs you: your attention. Because the more energy you spend trying to manage what you can't control, the less you have for the only thing that actually moves the needle: making good content worth watching. Fear of burnout is the fear that if you give this everything you have, you won't have anything left. Many highly successful creators have publicly shared their struggles with burnout, in some cases even leading to quitting YouTube altogether. This one really hits home for me. A couple of years ago, I was running a YouTube channel while managing a full-time law practice and raising my 2 kids. I spent about 20 to 30 hours a week on my channel. Literally every waking moment outside of work and sleep was spent growing my channel. I slowly stopped doing things I loved. I gained 10 pounds. I completely isolated myself. And eventually, that's part of what made me walk away. So when I started this channel, that resistance came up almost immediately. It was the fear that going all in would take me right back to that place. And that's what this fear does. Some creators push through the signals of burnout and end up reaching a breaking point. Others hold back because they've already been there and don't want to go back. Either way, the fear wins. And you never get to find out what you could have built if you hadn't been so afraid of losing yourself in it. Fear of expectations is the fear that once people expect something from you, that expectation becomes a burden you can't put down. When your channel starts gaining real traction, something shifts. You're no longer just creating for yourself. People show up consistently and they expect something from you. And that starts to feel less like fun and connection and more like pressure. What if I can't keep this up? What if the next video disappoints them? And to be clear, viewer expectations aren't the problem. Knowing what your audience is going to get before they click on your video is part of effective branding. The problem is when fear starts driving how you respond to those expectations. Because there's a real difference between creating to deliver on your brand promise and creating to avoid disappointing people. When fear takes over, the question stops being how can I deliver value to my viewers and becomes what will they be okay with? And the moment that happens, you've handed your creative authority over to the fear. Fear of the unknown is the fear of not being able to see what's ahead. And on YouTube, there's a lot you can't see. You don't know if you're on the right path. You don't know if your channel has a real future. You don't know how long it's going to take or whether the time you're putting in will eventually pay off. That uncertainty makes full commitment feel risky. So you hedge. You keep one foot in and one foot out. You pivot before your strategy has had time to breathe. You second guess decisions because you haven't seen proof yet that they're working. And the trap is, this fear doesn't feel like fear at all. It feels like being strategic, cautious, or realistic. But what's actually happening is you're waiting for proof before you fully commit, not realizing that the commitment is what creates the proof. Before I show you the pattern underneath all of this, let me know in the comments which fear you recognize most in yourself. Just naming it out loud can shift something inside of you. These 12 fears don't exist in isolation. When you look at them together, they all trace back to 4 core human needs: safety, belonging, self-worth, and identity. Fear of losing control and the unknown are safety fears. Fear of judgment, visibility, conflict, and rejection are all belonging fears. Fear of not being good enough is a self-worth fear. And fear of failure, success, and expectations are identity fears. These fears aren't random struggles. They reflect a pattern. And recognizing that pattern is the first real step toward changing it. Now that you understand the fears that might be holding you back, the next step is learning how to actually move forward when they show up. And that's what the next video covers. It'll be right here when it's ready.